right, there we go. Normally we have our awesome office manager Holly in to help us out. So if anybody can, if you have any questions or links or resources you would like to share to the group, pop it into the chat. We'll be sure to get those in a follow-up communication, detailing kind of the highlights of today's topics. That'll all be in your inbox a little bit later after the meeting. But good morning. So normally what we would do is reach out amongst the group and talk about near misses. So since we met last month, we did fall protection. And so between now and then, has anybody seen anything out there within your organization inside the four walls of your business or even on your job sites that were near misses, things that you caught or could have been involved with some type of safety, or how did you mitigate it? And anybody got anything out there? Joe, good morning.
Good morning, man. Good to see you. Near misses, I think we're doing all right right now. I think last time we talked, there was one of our employees hurt their hand when they were drilling and got caught. So that was actually a hit.
Did it drill into the hand or to get the glove?
The drill is like they were drilling and it just caught and it just tweaked it hard enough that it broke it apparently. But she's good to go right now. She's good working right now, but those little things.
Those big old hole saws.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Other than that, I think we're doing good right now, man.
Good to hear. That's good to hear. Yeah, talking about your tools and drilling, the drill is not necessarily dangerous itself. It's all of the perishables you attach to the drill, right? So it's all your bits, things like that. That's what's going to grab you. That's what's going to break, right? That's what's going to really, depending on your environment and what you're doing, it's really, like I said, those perishables that are going to be the thing that gets up into your fingers, into your eyes, so be really careful. Make sure you understand all of the functions of that tool, right? And the environment that you're in. Talking about wood, for electrical contractors that are on the call, if you've ever tried to do anything with, say, a 2-inch and up hole saw, you better brace yourself. You know what I mean? Especially if you're doing, because there's a difference between a battery operated tool and a cord operated tool. Okay, when it comes to safety, okay, and the torque and stuff like that's within that tool. If you're with a corded drill and you've got a hole saw on that thing, brace yourself. Okay, because not only do you have the torque of that drill to deal with, you've got that cord, right? So if that thing starts to spin around or do anything like that, it could rip it out of the wall. That cord could snap and hit something else, so use the right perishable or your bits. Be sure you understand the functions of the tool. I'm sure there's so many different safety videos and hit point topics and check boxes when it comes to tools. So just make sure you're using it properly, don't overdo it. And when it comes to gloves and like tool bits, right, and those perishables, wood bits or anything like that, just be sure that your hand is nowhere near that bit, because even though it doesn't hit your finger, it could hit your glove. Okay, and because of the torque and the movement of the machine, it could grab that glove and it could break fingers. It can, really injure you, so be careful with your tools, right? Make sure you're sturdy and bracing yourself when it comes to the torque and the usage of the tool. And forward think, right, what you have to do.
Yeah, and Paul, I had another one come up that I've never dealt with before. Have you ever dealt with PCBs for soil, when the soil has like high levels of PCBs, which is, I've never dealt with it. So
well, you have to sift the soil, right? The soil's contaminated.
Yeah, contamination of the soil.
Yeah, because I did a lot of gas stations, and so we would have to bring in a sampler, right, every single time we had to dig up dirt. And so it's it's not a good gig. They should have done a soil assessment prior to work. Is that what's going on?
Yeah, so they did a soil assessment we had before we started working, and they want us to have just some paperwork on how we're trying to handle that as a company, knowing that that's the site that we're on. And I've never dealt with that on the safety aspect of what I would need to do on if it's just job JHAs or whatever I need to do. I've never dealt with it before, so I was just curious if you've dealt with it.
Is there anybody doing any land movement or ground movement or soil movement on the job site? Is there a company that's in charge of that?
Yeah, I mean, it's the contract. It's a ground up building, and there's a lot of earthwork over there. So a lot of dirt work going over.
Yeah, I'm not Joe, so I'm not gonna try and say I'm the expert at that, but I would say whoever you're excavating, or is it an actual excavation company, or is it just like the plumbers digging, you're digging?
Yeah, there's an excavation company, and then the contractor has somebody too. So that's kind of what I was assuming is it'd be on their end to make sure that they're handling that.
Yeah, and what I would worry about that too, right? It's not just soil, not just soil contamination. It's it's what is the compaction of that soil, right? Because you've got to whack that soil.
Yep.
And so I would get with the land movement, because they're going to be able to say, hey, with the type of soil that we're dealing with, maybe they have to sift it, and bring soil in, right? Sift it with new soil, to decrease the concentration, right? But that's a good question. I'm not an expert. I'll get with that land movement and say, hey, what is the best way to mitigate this? And if there is, some guidelines on the different types of soil, that's the only advice I could give. But
that's what I thought, man. I think
I'll tell you no.
Yeah. No, I appreciate it, man. That's kind of what I thought too. They just wanted us to do some like JHAs on it. And I was like, well, I'll ask to see what I should do, because we're not really dealing with that, but we can talk about that later too if we need to.
Yeah, and maybe with whoever the general is, maybe they've got some strategies to mitigate, and procedures for dirt with that rating.
That sounds good. Thanks, man.
Yeah. Anybody else got any near misses, things that they've noticed out there, something that you could share with the group that we should be forward thinking on when it comes to safety? Anything else out there? Andy, good morning. Thanks for joining. Tim, thank you for joining. Josh, Rebecca, thank you.
All right, you ready to get started, Paul? I don't know where everybody else is, but I thought I would send out a quick note to those that accepted once we get things kicked off with Eugene this morning.
Yeah, just I'm ready to roll it over. Just remember to the safety group that next month in June, we're going to be covering OSHA heat. Okay, we're going to start getting hot out there. We want to make sure that y'all have a heat policy, right? And we're taking care of our workforce out there in the weather. So stay tuned, and we'll get you out the invites and everything for that. And then after that, we're going to schedule the facility tour in August. So I'm looking for ideas right now and places to visit. So if you've got any ideas, or maybe a connection somewhere where we can take a look at bigger infrastructure or bigger facilities, where safety is handled on a large scale and coordination on a large scale. So keep that in your mind. Share your thoughts with me, and we'll see if we can't make a connection and get a tour out on one of those projects. So thank you. I'm going to introduce Marilyn Stansberry. She's our IEC Rocky Mountain CEO, and she's come in this morning to share with the safety conversation. It is OSHA Stand Down for Safety. So Marilyn has been able to put a great speaker before us, and I'm going to pass it on to her.
Thank you, Paul, and thanks everybody for being on the call. I have the pleasure to introduce or reintroduce Eugene Wade. Some of you may know Eugene, or if you were at the Summit Awards presentation last year, you know that Eugene and the Colorado Emergency Preparedness Partnership was awarded our Strategic Initiatives Award last year. And Eugene spoke about the importance of threat mitigation and protecting our infrastructure, and how much work goes on between what happens in our public infrastructure with our electrical contractors. There's a lot of synergy that happens between, the work that you're doing in water treatment plants and other infrastructure, data center and other projects. Eugene has since moved on from SEP and is now the Protective Security Advisor for the Department of Homeland Security, Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. So Eugene is sort of taking it to the street, if you will, and has been in his new role all across the state of Colorado. And we wanted him to talk a little bit about insider threat mitigation from a risk management standpoint, certainly a safety issue, and have Eugene tell us a little bit about what to look out for and how CISA can partner with our electrical contractors. So Eugene, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Marilyn. Thanks for having me. It's great to see you and to be a part of this group again in my new role. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and we will get started. So is everybody seeing the slide presentation?
Yep.
Let me see, which window are you seeing?
It says Insider Threat Briefing, CISA Insider Threat Mitigation Guide.
Okay. And that's okay. Just because I'm just making sure I've got like two screens, one with readers' notes and stuff on it as well. So
yeah, I gotcha. No, this has your title, your name, a blue background that says Insider Threat Briefing.
Yeah, you're on presenter right now, so you're good.
Awesome. So I'm gonna stop my video just to save on bandwidth and make sure we move forward. So just an introduction. So like Marilyn said so eloquently, I know it's a mouthful, CISA, we'll just go by that instead of Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency. I've been with them about 8 months, and I'm what you call a Protective Security Advisor. I cover down on all of Colorado, and I'm able to assist with planning, coordinating, and conducting security and resilience surveys and assessments of nationally significant critical infrastructure. There's 16 critical infrastructure sectors that I cover down on. Instead of memorizing all of them, it's just know that almost every building that you guys work in, whether it be government or private sector, healthcare, whatever, it is covered by that. So I can come in and do assessments for those. I also provide training like I'm doing today to different groups. I was at Booz Allen Hamilton last week doing a bunch of training, and this was one of the ones that I did. And also spoke at the Fusion Centers conference last month and gave this briefing as well. And then we also help, after we do training, facilitating tabletop exercises so we can test how well people are trained. CISA has on their website over 100 pre-made tabletop exercises. So you can go out there and find those. And if you need help, you can give me a call and I'll help facilitate those. I'm actually working with the US Space Foundation down in the Springs on an active shooter exercise for them right now. So just a little bit about me and what I do. So no federal briefing would be complete without a vision and mission statement slide. So here's ours. We're talking about insider threats today. But before we talk about what an insider threat is, we need to, what is an insider? So an insider is any person who has or has had authorized access or knowledge of an organization's resources. It's somebody that the organization trusts. They've been given a badge, they've been access to the network. They have special knowledge about the products and services or the organization fundamentals or the business strategy, and they have access to protected information. So an insider threat is an individual who uses that authorized access or special understanding of an organization to cause harm to that organization. That could be malicious, complaint sent, unintentional, we're going to go into all the different types of ways that insider threat can affect your organization. Here's some examples of those. So an engineer that steals and sells trade secrets to a competitor. If anybody's seen Jurassic Park, we all know how the guy was getting the embryos out through the shaving cream tube. That's a perfect example of that engineer stealing insider threats. Maintenance technician cuts network server wires, or maybe in your line of work, somebody removes the ground and causes havoc on all the equipment, electrical equipment in there. So a majority of known insider threats fall into the category of unintentional threats. That could be through somebody's negligence. They expose an organization to a threat by their carelessness. So say you have coming in and out of work, you have badge access. You badge in and somebody else walks in behind you. Nobody wants to be rude. Some people don't like to confront other people, but you need to not do that. But that's negligence. Accidental is making a mistake or causing an unintended risk to an organization. I don't know about you guys, but I love the autofill on my email. And if I'm in a rush, I might type a few letters, hit the enter button, and I might be sending something to somebody who with sensitive information to somebody who shouldn't get that. Even though I have that disclaimer on the bottom of my emails, that could still be an accidental exposure of trade secrets. So intentional threats. This is a failure to garner recognition that a person felt they earned. So a promotion, bonuses, desirable travel, or even termination have motivated many insiders to get even by leaking sensitive information, harassing associates, sabotaging equipment, or perpetrating violence. So this is the intentional threat. This is somebody who has a grievance, whether real or perceived, and they want to act on that grievance. Other threats include collusive threats. When one or more insiders collaborate with an external threat actor to compromise an organization. I used to be federal law enforcement with the Air Force Office of Special Investigations, and we worked with what's called foreign intelligence service threats. And this would be when a foreign intelligence specialist would be controlling an asset within an organization to get information out of it. Or a third-party threat, contractors or vendors who have been granted access to facilities, systems, networks, or people. A cyber example of this would be SolarWinds. So you had a trusted third-party company application, and many different businesses, government entities use SolarWinds to run their business. So instead of going after the hard targets, which were the companies or the government, they went after the soft target, SolarWinds, and they installed malicious code into trusted updates that went out to all those businesses. And they were like, oh yeah, SolarWinds is sending an update. We trust them. It came right through and then installed the stuff inside there. So that's an example of that third-party threat. But insider threats manifest in various ways. This wheel kind of talks about it. There's a couple of subcategories for each of those: violent, espionage, sabotage, theft, and cyber. And we'll go into those next. So violence. The difference between workplace and organizational violence and terrorism is that terrorism is motivated to promote a political or social objective. And terrorism can either be domestic or foreign. So, except workplace violence, that's definitely something we need to watch out for. And like I said, terrorism, we're dealing with so many different flavors of homegrown violent extremists here in the United States. I just saw a report yesterday where they talked about, showed how many of the different extremist groups share similar motivations and ideations. So even though they call themselves something a little bit different, they all are working towards the same goal, which is to disrupt our government and act on those perceived grievances that they have. So espionage, you've got the economic, government, criminal. I don't need to read the slide to you guys, so we'll move on from here. So sabotage. You have physical sabotage. I'm sure you guys, like I talked about, if you like do something to harm an organization's physical infrastructure. So like I said, removing that ground from the electrical equipment so that it doesn't operate correctly. Or there is an example of at a water treatment facility, we had a individual who was disgruntled, about to leave. He used his authorized access to come back after hours, and he turned off alarms, reset different devices to put more chlorine into the water that it was supposed to be. It was going to be at dangerous levels. Luckily, by the time the people came in on shift, they checked everything, saw what had been done, was able to mitigate it before anybody was hurt. But that's a perfect example of physical sabotage. And then virtual sabotage would be that malicious actions using technical means, like the cyber. So you have theft, so financial crimes and intellectual property. So unauthorized taking or illicit use of a person's, businesses, or organization's money. So that's taking the money or taking funds or diverting funds to your account. That's the financial crime. Intellectual property, theft, or a lot of engineers, when they leave, they might think, oh, I created this program, or I created this intellectual property IP for the company. So I'm authorized to take that when I leave and use it at my competitor. But as we all know, whatever you do while you're employed with a company belongs to that company. So even though you might have created this IP, it doesn't mean you can take it. So you have your cyber, and we talked a little bit about this already, the unintentional versus the intentional. So an insider threat mitigation program, an effective one, covers these 5 bullet points right here. It identifies and focuses on the critical assets, data, and services. So it identifies the crown jewels of your business. It monitors behavior. That's through personal monitoring and cyber monitoring. Once it sees a threat or an anomaly, it assesses that threat. It manages the entire range of insider threats and engages individual insiders. It doesn't just stand back and wait and watch. They intervene as soon as possible to mitigate and make the harm as less as possible. So its objectives are to understand the insider's organization within an interaction within an organization and monitor that interaction as appropriate, and then to intervene and manage when it poses a threat. So successful programs accomplish these objectives while addressing 3 core principles. Promoting and protecting a supportive culture. And this is probably the hardest thing, is creating a culture of reporting with your people. We've all heard the term snitches get stitches. We have to get away from that. Safeguarding organizational valuables and remaining adaptive. There's many different threats that are being created out there. ChatGPT, AI, these new technologies are increasing at an exponential rate at what their capabilities are. And the bad guys are looking at them to figure out how they can use those, not just for a hacker attack, but for social engineering of your people as well, to encourage them to do these bad things. So a strong foundation for insider threat prevention and mitigation comes from a set of values that are shared and acted upon by everyone in an organization. Such a foundation helps to shape the way people think about these threats to people, assets, and information, and the approach they should take when observing indicators in their environment. So again, that's creating that culture, making sure everybody knows what's acceptable. We all know what a baseline behavior is. When we go to work, we've worked with these people before. We're going to go over what the behavioral indicators are later, but the key thing is when you notice something that's outside of baseline behavior, that's when you need to investigate or report so somebody else can investigate, because that might be an indicator that they're going down a path of violence or vengeance. So ensuring that members are educated about the dynamics of insider threats is critical to setting a culture of reporting. Starts with letting members know that they will likely be in a position to detect the threats. Establishing a focus on accountability versus blame also plays a role in a program protective culture. So insider threat mitigation programs are not gotcha programs. They're not there to try to catch people doing wrong. They're there to let people know why it's important to report, get them to report, and letting them be part of the solution. I used to be the director of security for the Denver Performing Arts Complex downtown, where the Buell Theater and the Broadway shows are played. And we had multiple different people working in there. So we had permanent city employees, temporary city employees, contractors, we had union stagehands, we had volunteers, and I did training with each one of them. And all the training on safety, I was like, look, your job isn't to be security, but you are in a position where you will see things that my security people won't see or I won't see. I need you to know what level do you report those to. And then when they did report, it wasn't like, oh, okay, I'll take this report and not do anything with it. We would investigate the report. If it was valid, then we would act on that report. And then I would go back to the employee and their supervisor and let them know what was done because of their report of an anomaly. And I had a number of different employees, custodians and other people that didn't think they had a voice come up to me and say, you were the first person who listened and acted on these things, and we're really glad you're here. So that really encouraged that culture of reporting. In some cases, an improper organizational response may provide a triggering event, transforming a potential insider threat into an actual one. So say somebody reported something and they were reporting that, hey, this person is like they're having a personal grievance with another coworker, and the supervisor or HR minimizes the impact that it's having on that person, saying, oh, you just need to cowboy up, you need to deal with it, this isn't that big, it's not a big deal. That might, and then the activity still persists, that could definitely lead somebody or push somebody over the edge down that pathway of violence to becoming an insider threat. So just being sensitive to what people are telling you. And then remaining adaptive. And like I said, an adaptive insider, this is an evolving challenge requiring adaptive and resilient practices to address a dynamic environment. And I already mentioned, like I said, with the new tools that are coming out there and the new technologies, you guys are well aware, the Internet of Things, on how that all interacts and how it's secured within these organizations. We just need to keep on top of the new technology and remain adaptive. So as the body of knowledge for insider threat detection and identification continues to grow, researchers with the Defense Personnel and Security Research Center have identified 4 core behavioral principles to consider. So certain individuals are more likely to pose threats. So we all know somebody who's more prone to get upset over something. Certain environments are more likely to facilitate insider threat behavior. So like I said, an environment where the leadership doesn't take complaints seriously might be more conducive to creating insider threats. An individual's transformation from a trusted insider to a malicious actor is a process. Nobody just clicks and has something happen to them and then says, I'm going to act violent or do something to sabotage this company. It's a process, it leads up to that. There is a tipping point, but it all starts somewhere, And where it starts is where we can intervene to keep it from getting to that tipping point. And then high impact, low frequency insider threat behavior correlates with and is preceded by common indicators. So like I said, people going down this pathway to violence have certain indicators that we can pick up on that will let us know we need to intervene. So researchers of insider threats describe an evolution from trusted insider to insider threat as a critical pathway wherein the subject's personal predispositions and background, which make them susceptible to the temptation of a malicious act, interact with their personal stressors in the organizational environment, moving them down a pathway toward a malicious incident. So there's many different visual representations of the pathway to violence. This is just one of them. I think this does a really good job of kind of talking about what those steps are. So number one is the grievance and ideation. This is the first step on the pathway, and it's the expression of someone's distress or reason for complaint or resentment. A real or even a perceived wrong that takes on a highly personalized meaning for the individual, or it could be a stressor involving social, financial, or ideological concerns. Step two is preparation. The idea or grievance will manifest in behaviors as the insider begins to conceptualize how they will wish to carry out their plan. Behavior reflects one's beliefs, feelings, and emotions manifesting in observable actions. When you're upset, when you're frustrated, you're not going to be able to hide that from your coworkers. You're going to act, the person's going to start acting outside that baseline that we know is normal. And that's an indicator that we should ask questions and explore. Step three is exploration. So now the insider may begin to seek weaknesses in security, find new access points, or decide which data they want to destroy, misuse, or steal. They may also begin to try to recruit other like-minded individuals to assist in the act. When I was in law enforcement, we always talked about why people get caught. And either they get greedy, try to take more than what they can get away with, or they recruit other people. Once you have more than one person involved in the scheme, you're more likely to get caught because the best way to keep a secret is not to share the secret. Four is experimentation. An insider may attempt to begin surveillance of certain locations. They might attempt to infiltrate a building or technological system, appear in areas where they do not belong, or otherwise test boundaries within their organization. This goes for cyber as well. Most networks have segmented authorization, like not any employee can access all the information on the network. But if you have network tools that are monitoring this and you see a person trying to access information that they shouldn't be, that might be a clue or an indicator that you need to investigate further. Number five is execution. So with a hostile act or violation formulated, planned, and rehearsed, the insider may now take advantage of their access and knowledge to execute their plan. And then number six is escape. Depending on the type of action taken, escape may involve evading detection and distorting evidence of the act, such as shifting blame or altering records or covering movement of malicious actions. And in cases of a violent act, the insider may attempt to evade capture and arrest or commit suicide, either by their own hand or through intentional provocation of armed responders. So people as sensors, people are best positioned to have insight into and awareness of predispositions, stressors, and behaviors of insiders who may be considering malicious acts. So like I said, we all have worked together. We know what our baseline behavior is. But when people start acting outside that baseline, we need to pay attention and ask questions to find out, are they what is their grievance? What's their stressor? What's causing them to act outside that baseline? And what should we do with that information? How do we report it? So technological detection tools mine diverse data sets for anomalies such as physical or computer access records, keystrokes or mouse clicks, or communication records. These tools can be helpful in the detection of abnormal behaviors. A number of software tools, detection tools, are listed on in the blue box on the slide. And just to remind everybody, in case you didn't know, whenever you're at work and on your network doing anything, even if your cell phone is connected to a wireless access point or a network that is controlled by your business, all of that traffic, all the information that's gone over that is subject and is authorized to be monitored. So we should all be aware that everything we do on our work computer or through an access point at work is able to be monitored. So threat indicators. This is where we're going to start talking about what do these threat indicators look like. And these are the categories of those threat indicators. So in 27 violent attacks in public spaces, 85% of the attackers made concerning comments prior to doing the attack. They expressed interest in previous attackers, may have made racist or misogynistic comments. They referenced a desire to purchase a gun or a weapon or get some type of specialized training, expressed aspirations to commit future violence, or idealized those who have done violent acts in the past. So these are some personal indicators, and these indicators are based on personal stressors going on in a person's life. In addition to personal life stressors, professional stressors can create potential grievances against an employee, organization, or agency. An individual may feel disrespected and see a hostile action as a way to gain respect, but they may feel the need for revenge against an organizational policy, management, peer, or specific decision. Background indicators are identified through an objective screening of an individual's historical records. These background checks are common prior to an individual joining an organization, especially where insiders will gain access to sensitive information. So just let me, I don't know if I can go back. Sorry. On the background indicators, I don't know how many of you guys work with certain government contracts, maybe in cleared facilities, and you may have to have a clearance to get into those. Many of these background things, the reason they look at addiction to certain alcohol, drugs, and gambling, or their spending exceeds their income, or concerning relationships. These are ways that a foreign intelligence service could compromise an individual. They could use their addiction and threaten to expose that. Or if they're having extramarital affairs and they find out about it, or they put somebody in place to tempt somebody and they act on that, now they are able to blackmail somebody into doing something. That's why these things are so important, to see if they're susceptible to those types of threats. So over time, these behaviors create a baseline of activities, like we talked about. You have a baseline behavior. Unlike personal and background indicators, which typically require an examination of the person of concern's life, behavioral indicators are directly observable by peers, HR personnel, supervisors, and technology. So most insider threat incidents require little technical sophistication. Just because this says technical indicators doesn't mean you have to be savvy in cyber or certain technical sophistication. Research in the banking and finance sector have indicated that most attacks were neither complex nor required much technological skill and were committed by individuals who did not work in IT and did not have extensive backgrounds in technology. Instead, these individuals exploited vulnerabilities in systems and processes to commit theft or sabotage. So one of these vulnerabilities could be if you allow thumb drives to be plugged into different network devices. Some companies say, okay, we disable all USB connections that we haven't done. Or if there's a USB or a network cable, if it is unplugged, then that port goes dead until somebody from IT can come and see, okay, we will reconnect it. That way something else can't be connected to the network. The organizational issues listed can create additional motivation for an insider to become a threat to an organization. An inappropriate organizational response can often provide that tipping point or last straw to motivate an insider threat to act. This is what I talked about, making people feel valued, creating a culture of reporting. We need to watch out for these indicators. Now, violence carries with it specific behaviors or collections of behaviors that can instill fear or generate a concern that a person might act. This list contains some of the examples. And this is the one we're most worried about, is the violent insider threat. Because unlike money or intellectual property or other data or equipment, human lives cannot be fixed or recouped. So these are the indicators that I would stress as an organization, we would want to pay most attention to and try to prevent this type of insider threat. So domestic abuse indicators. We often might think that, okay, somebody's acting outside the baseline, and then a supervisor or a friend who's a coworker or HR, they talk to the person and they find out, oh, they're going through a difficult divorce or a breakup or something at home. We shouldn't just be like, oh, that's your personal business, we're going to let you handle that. We need to ask questions. We need to find out, is the partner that they're separating from prone to violence? Have they made threats before to them? And if so, what do we need to do? Do we need to make our security aware that, give them a picture of this person, create a bolo, or be on the lookout, if they show up? This was very apparent in the 2016 Alliance Building shooting in Denver when I was working downtown. It was an active shooter event, and it was a couple that was going through a divorce, and the spouse was prone to violence. And he came in with a weapon, walked into her office, and shot her dead in front of everybody. That could have easily been him shooting a bunch of other people as well. So don't minimize these domestic abuse indicators. So these terrorism bias, incident, and terrorism indicators. So this is where somebody's showing they are identifying with or showing sympathy towards some terrorist or ideological group out there, whether it be foreign or domestic terrorism. They're expressing their agreeance on how they feel. If somebody starts to show an ideation with a certain type of either domestic extremist or terrorist extremist group or some type of extremist movement, we need to report those things, because that could be part of a bigger problem. So the factors along the crucial path to insider risk is an evaluation framework used to assess if a person of concern poses a general risk to an organization. So organizations should begin their threat assessment by using a general risk tool. And this just looks at how we move on that. We see the personal predispositions of the person. We look at their stressors, their concerning behaviors, all those indicators that we just talked about. We need to engage before we get to that hostile act. So establishing a risk rubric. When something is reported, the act, the fear, the outside the baseline behavior. We have to see where it fits on this chart. And one thing about this chart is the indicator, once somebody reports it, they might not have reported some of the smaller things. And when they do report it, you might get the first report at the severe or extreme risk. But if you do get a report at that mild or moderate risk, that doesn't mean you just stand back and wait until it goes up to the severe or extreme risk to engage. You need to engage as soon as you get the report. Oh, sorry. And then creating your team. This is probably one of the biggest parts, just making sure you have a multidisciplinary team that includes everybody. One of the things we talk about in creating safety and security teams at different organizations is the most important person on your team is the person you forgot to invite. So make sure you have somebody who sees the organization from all different perspectives. So concluding thoughts are there are a range of observable behaviors that can serve as warning signs for a person or concern who's on the pathway to an insider threat. Organizations should establish a culture of reporting and train their members on how to report their concerns or observations. And then an effective insider threat mitigation program should be grounded in the notions of helping people avoid mistakes, providing a safe environment, and preventing insider incidents from occurring. And then I have a final thought that this is not CIS's final thought. This is Eugene Wade's final thought. And it's a quote by Leo Buscaglia. He was an American author, a motivational speaker, and a professor in the Department of Special Education at the University of Southern California. And it is, too often we underestimate the power of a touch, a smile, a kind word, a listening ear, an honest compliment, or the smallest act of caring, all of which have the potential to turn a life around. When you see somebody who's stressing, engage with them, ask them what's wrong. Some people are less extroverted than others and more introverted. They might not come and talk about their problems, but just taking care of each other, taking care of your people will go a long way into making somebody preventing them from going down that pathway to violence. And then here's a number of resources. Most of the information from this slide was taken from the Insider Threat Mitigation Guide on our website. You can also go to FEMA. They have a number of great resources. The National Counterterrorism Center Joint Counterterrorism Assessment Team. These three aren't specific towards insider threats, but they can give you a lot of good information. And then these are some of our other partners. And that is it. I think I took us right to the end.
Eugene, that was awesome and a lot of information. Thank you so much. Would it be possible? I don't know, this is the Department of Homeland Security. Can I get a copy of that presentation?
Yeah, by all means. I can, I've got a PDF version. That way you guys can have access to all the links and resources at the end.
Yeah, because we like to send out a recap and make sure that all of our contractors and industry partners have a resource right to today's safety forum. So thank you so much. Once again, I find it so very interesting and just something that in the time that I've been spent as an educator, I've taken a number of professional development classes, right, on tactful conversation and identifying the elephant in the room and dealing with difficult people. But one of the professional development courses or series of courses that I'm really fascinated in is the personality trait assessments, where you could call it a Myers-Briggs, you could call it, a Fred Pryor, or whatever type of evaluation. But I find those once I took those assessments, because not only does it kind of identify some traits, right, per say a survey, right, but it also identifies different ways to deal with other traits and different personality and management types. And so sometimes you can identify, right, like you're saying, more introverted or extroverted people who are dealing with something different. Their changing how their moods and their actions and their day-to-day navigation is. And if you can identify those things, you know, there's opportunities, right? If you can identify. And that's what I want to encourage everybody to do. If you have not done a professional or a personal evaluation assessment, or professional and personal assessment on yourselves, those are really important, because sometimes to be able to identify traits within somebody else, you have to know who you are. Okay. Because how we give and receive information is totally different. And so it would help, you know, it helps, because when I'm dealing with a student or an instructor, or, you know, a forum like this, or I'm doing a public speaking or any of those things, you know, you really have to try and identify with your audience who you're talking to. What are those traits? What are some of the more actions that can be going, or that can be taken, that are more accepted and approachable when it comes to your tact? So those are really important. So I would encourage everybody to take some type of professional assessment. It'll help, and you'll be surprised, because once you start learning other people's traits and kind of things to identify and see on how you need to adjust, as well as how you can see how other people are, right? It can be kind of a lot of fun to play with personalities and really test those theories. You know, is this a driven person, or is this a task person, right? Or is this, you know what I mean? And to identify threats, to identify a threat, it's a difference in behavior and actions, right? And so if you can identify those, mitigation and de-escalation, right? That's where that happens. So thank you so much, Eugene. I just wanted to throw that little bit in there. I think there's some training that we all may need. I've got your, if you send that presentation, that'll be awesome. I'd also, if it's okay, I'd like to share your contact information if anybody may have a question for you, or you know, an inquiry on a resource. Is that cool?
Yeah, most definitely. So yeah, I'll send the link when I send the copy of the slides. I'll have a link to like a job description for me as well. And then if you guys ever have any questions about that, or even if it's not listed in the description, if it's about security, about training, if I don't do it, I probably know somebody who does. So I could get you guys connected.
Oh, very awesome, and very awesome. We really appreciate it. And maybe we can bring you back another time to talk about this again.
Outstanding. Thank you.
All right, Eugene, thank you so much for the group. Once again, OSHA Heat is coming up in June. Look for your calendar invite for that. And then once again, keep in mind something forward thinking for a facility tour. We'd really like to come up with something cool. In the past, we've done Empower Field, Ball Arena, Coors Field. We did the airport, right? The baggage system at the airport, Union Station. So those bigger scale projects and properties where safety is not just one person's responsibility. It is a team of safety people, you know, so we can identify a bunch of different areas that we may need to pay attention to if we're doing work in those areas. So thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Rick. Thank you, Eugene. Thanks, Joe, Rebecca, Josh, Brian, Andy, and Tim. If you have any questions, needs, or concerns, reach out to us. Do want to remind everybody our shotgun shoots is coming up, and our graduation. So if you haven't registered for those, jump onto IECRM or IECRM.org and get registered. And having said that, if there's no questions or needs, I bid you a fantastic Wednesday.
Thanks, guys. See ya.
Thanks, Paul. Thank you, Gene.
Thanks, everybody. Really appreciate it. Thanks, Andy. Andy, ending for all, brother.